mom called me and said, I was driving and the car in front of me's license plate says Ruby. And so now she realizes how important that was. But through all of it, the thing that stood out the most to me was how little miscarriage or stillbirth or ectopic pregnancy or any other name you can come up with for a baby that dies in a mother's womb, how little it's talked about. And I had so many women like privately reach out to me and say, hey, I lost a baby too. There was women that said nobody even knew. And I thought, how sad that you've been carrying this pain for 20 years and not one person was able to just hug you and love you through it. Like, some of them was because they felt ashamed or they just, maybe it was their fault or what, any of a number of reasons. And I thought, you shouldn't have to carry this pain alone. And so, in the midst of it, while I'm literally waiting for my baby to be born, I just thought, I'm going to do something with this. Like, I'm going to tell my story, and I'm going to be there for women that are hurting. And, people get tired of hearing about it. It's okay, they don't have to talk to me. But my baby mattered, and other people are hurting and losing babies all the time, too. And they should not be dealing with this alone. You shouldn't have to cry in the car after a doctor's appointment because you found out that your baby doesn't have a heartbeat anymore. You should have someone that could go with you, or just somebody to acknowledge your pain. And so often, like, women don't even share that they're pregnant because they're like, well, what if I lose it, Well, then you don't have to be alone in your pain, Like, you don't have to wait until some magic number. There's no guarantee your baby's going to make it one way or another. So share that life and rejoice over it while you have it. Like the scripture says, life is just a vapor. And for me, I'm glad that I spent my whole 30th birthday celebrating this baby that I was waiting for. Like, what joy. I can't think of anything more joyful to do on my birthday than to be happy about a new life that's waiting to be born. And so, people always think, oh, I can't believe you told everyone already, because what if you lose it? Well, it's not like you jinxed yourself. Like, oh, I told everyone before 12 weeks, so it's my fault. But on the list, there's a couple things that I would recommend. Can I look at your list? These are things that were difficult for me personally, but because there's so many women that don't talk about it, I read a lot of blogs just because I felt like if somebody else could make sense of what I was thinking, then I felt like I wasn't alone. One of the first things I recommend is just asking someone if they're comfortable talking to you about it, because some women don't want to talk, and sometimes they may not want to talk to you, and it's not necessarily something personal against you, it's just that it's something that they feel very private about. And so being vulnerable and emotional is something that they, either they need to be mentally prepared for it or they reserve it for special things. So I would just recommend asking them if they feel comfortable talking about it. And if they say no, it's okay, and leave it alone. And if they say no, but then eventually they want to open up to you, just be a good listener. Like, be receptive and, take it when they have it and then let it be. I recommend asking them if it's okay for you to talk about it. For me, I love it when somebody says, hey, I saw something that said Ruby today, because it just reminds me that I'm not the only one that still thinks about it. But for some people, that's kind of like, I would say a trigger or just unexpected, and it can stir up the pain. And so one of my friends has a little boy that was stillborn, and she played a song when she was in labor with him. And so every time I hear it, I'll say, I hear Kenton's song, and she loves that because I'm still thinking about it, and to know that he's on my mind too. You can never go wrong with saying, I care about you and I'm sorry. Women need to hear this is not your fault. I felt like if I just took better care of myself, or we had a company picnic just a couple weeks before I miscarried, and we were playing in the bouncy house, and I thought, well, maybe if I just didn't bounce in the bouncy house, or, and you think of all these things you could have done different to save your baby, but ultimately it's up to God, and, it's not your fault. It's okay to say, I don't know what to say. It's really important to ask about the dad. I started a ministry called Forget Me Not, which is part of Alaska Christian Women's Ministry, and initially it was a group of women that got together. And then over the course of the years, some of the husbands started coming and talking with my husband, and I didn't realize how important that was in his healing. And also, the family lost the baby. Your children, if you have any, lost a sibling, you're going through this together. And sometimes the husband's pain is different because he may not have physically gone through it, but he's had to support you the best that he can while still trying to deal with the fact that he's lost a baby. And sometimes it's easier for them to separate themselves from it because they didn't physically experience it. sometimes it's a matter of just protecting themselves, like they have to be strong for you. But for me, I needed my husband to cry. I'm like, I need somebody else to be brokenhearted over this. And so when he finally had a meltdown, I was like, yay. And I know that sounds terrible, but I'm like, I'm not the only one that lost a baby. And so it was just comforting for me to see him cry too. Like, I just need to know that I'm not the only one that's heartbroken. But just asking how the dad is doing and if he had someone that he can talk to, or if you've been there and your husband's willing to talk, letting them know that there's other dads that have been heartbroken too. It makes way more of a difference than I ever realized. It's important to ask them what you would like them to call their baby. I have asked people, like, did you choose to name your baby? And I didn't realize that that could be abrasive because sometimes people feel guilty like they didn't name their baby, but I wanted to name my baby because I named all my other babies. And for my husband, he was apprehensive because it made it final. Like, this was a real baby. And so he was on the fence about it. I'm like, well, I'm going to call her whatever I want if you're not going to help, because I'm naming her. But then it was just, he admitted that it made it final to him, that it acknowledged that it was a life that was lost. But anyway, so some women prefer to just refer to them as a baby, and some like to name them. And I think it's better just to ask them, what would you like? Because you don't want them to feel guilty or ashamed that they decided not to name them for whatever reason. It's important to ask them if there's appointments that would be good for you to go with. Like, I had a lot of appointments afterwards because they're waiting to see if you physically delivered, and then I had surgery and all this other stuff. And it was really hard to go to some of those places alone, like just to bring yourself to go back into the room where they told you your baby's heart stopped. It's hard, especially when you're by yourself. And so, maybe they want to go along, but just knowing that there's the option to not have to is great. And also, if she says, yeah, I would really like your company, I offer to drive, because my mind was all over the place, having to work yourself up to even go back into the building where they told you your baby was dead. Like, trying to drive and do all while you're like lost in your own head is probably not very safe. So if you offer to drive, it gives her the option to just kind of be in her thoughts and not have to worry about not ruining somebody. Asking if there's errands you can run, like my friend offering to go to the pharmacy for me, that was huge. Like, that was the one thing I couldn't do it. I know I had to, but it was really hard. And so just saying, can I run an errand for you? Or like checking the mail so that way they don't have to get those formula samples and stuff like that for a while. Or even some of the bills that come after, like, here's the bill for your DMC. Well, that was hard to open. Just some of those things, like, can I help you open the mail so that you don't have to look at those things? Asking if you'd like them to go with you to a support group or to see a counselor. The Forget Me Not ministry is very small, and we haven't met really in a while because a lot of the women that were in the group have come to a place where they're comfortable, they're in a good place, and so the need hasn't been as urgent. But sometimes we've met at coffee shops in like a private room. Sometimes we meet at my house and we send all the kids downstairs, or we go downstairs and let them run amok upstairs. But it's always a private place to talk. We don't ever share what's being discussed. It's like usually me and Ashley and a couple other women. We don't even discuss who's been there, just because some women don't want everyone to know that they've miscarried for whatever reason. And so, if you feel like, even if your miscarriage has been 20 years ago and you just feel like, I just need to get it out with somebody, you're welcome. And I'm okay with a friend coming, not maybe every time, but initially, because it's like, okay, I'm going through this emotional thing and I know I'm gonna cry and it's people I don't know and it's just intimidating. Like, what am I going to expect while we're there? And so just having a friend to come with you and say, I'll go with you, like, I'll cry with you, whatever it may be, just kind of makes people to go to that first place and like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Asking if there's important dates that you can remember. Hard dates would be like the date of loss, the date you found out you were pregnant, due dates, and just different things along the way. Some people choose to remember those things. You're going to remember them anyway. I didn't want to know the dates, and then I had to for medical reasons. Like, well, how long have you been bleeding? Well, let me figure it out. So, like, I have a date when I started bleeding, a date when I think the baby was delivered, all those things like that. We let off, like, a sky lantern, even though it's illegal. I didn't realize it, but I'm like, well, too bad. I have to break the law sometimes. In honor of our baby the first year when she was born. Offer to help her go through her Facebook or do it for her. I know that sounds terrible, and don't unfriend anyone, but you can hide people's posts without them knowing. Like, you can go and just unfollow it for a while so you don't have to see the ultrasound pictures and the baby shower posts, and nobody has to know about that but you. But sometimes those things are really hard to look at every day, or sometimes you feel like you log in and they're like, oh, 25 people are pregnant today except for me. And so you can help her, filter her Facebook for a little while if she wants to do that. And then when she's ready, like, okay, I'm in a good place where I feel like I want to see what everybody's doing, then they can go back and look at those things. That's one of the hard things too, is that it feels guilty to feel jealous. You feel guilty for like, how could I have these ugly thoughts when I don't want this other person to lose their baby, but then at the same time, you don't really want to hear about it either. And some things to avoid saying, like, you can always try again. For one, you don't know that. Like, maybe it was an IVF, or maybe, with a tubal pregnancy, sometimes you lose your ability to have children. And so saying, maybe you can try again, maybe they can't. But even if they can, they wanted this baby. Like, they don't want any other baby. They wanted that one. And so whether they try again or not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't undo what just happened. Saying at least you have other children, or anything that says at least, like at least you weren't blah, blah, blah. No, at least nothing. Having other children, sometimes it's harder after that, because then, like for me, I had anxiety about what if one of these kids dies too, I have never been more grateful for my other children than after I lost one. You realize how fragile life really is. One of the things I would recommend saying instead is, like, how are your other kids doing? When I lost Ruby, it was really hard for me to be vulnerable in front of our children, because I didn't want them to see me falling apart. But it was going to make me cry. I wanted Faith to be real to them. Like, when you are so brokenhearted you can't stand up straight, I want them to see me kneeling on the floor before my bed and just crying out to the Lord. Because you can say anything, you can bring your kids to church, you can teach them Bible verses, but when faith is lived out in real life, that's when faith is real to them. They grieved with us. They saw me and their dad at the altar crying and asking God for another baby. All those things were real to them, and it wasn't a show like, this is what you're supposed to do when you're sad. It was genuine. And our youngest daughter, she turned 4 right after, and so 4-year-olds are just more, and they say what they're thinking. But she would just say, I miss Ruby sometimes. And still now, she's 7, and she said, I miss Ruby. And our older daughter did not like to talk about it. Like, she still gets uncomfortable about it. But one day she came home from school last year, and she was saying, Mom, they were talking about another teacher who lost their baby, and how God worked things in that situation. And she said, Mom, when Ruby died, I saw God grow your faith. And I can't think of a better thing that they would see out of such heartache, but to see my faith be real. I know that God grew my faith because of the way that I had to rely on Him so much. I didn't realize I was such a control freak until I was like, well, I need to be pregnant by this day because I don't have a baby by this day. And then all those dates passed, and God said, no, I'm in control. And then I remember one night praying, okay, Lord, whatever you decide, I give it to you. And then I found out I was pregnant. I'm like, seriously? Heating season? Like, I worked for a plumbing and heating company, and I was due at like the worst time of the year. But it worked out really well, because then I got to be off for a couple weeks when it was super busy. But it was when I genuinely surrendered that to the Lord. I said, okay, you can have a baby. Don't say God needed another angel. I've seen a phrase, and it sounds kind of crass, but it's easy for you to say that God needed another angel when He didn't ask you for yours. But babies are not angels. Humans are humans, and angels are angels, and they're not the same. Your baby's not going to be an angel when it dies. Like, I know some people think it's comforting to think of your babies in heaven, and they are, but they're not angels. Angels are immortal beings, and humans are humans. But like I said, God needed another angel. Like, how hard to think that, okay, God took my baby away to make it go to work. Like, I got stuff to do around the house, okay? God won't give you anything you can handle. That contradicts scripture as well. And actually, let me pull up the verse. Pastor Darrell was talking about it the other day. Saying that God won't give us anything that we can handle puts us in God's place. Like, if we were meant to do difficult things on our own, we would have no real need for God. It's 2 Corinthians 12:9. Let me pull it up really quick. Sorry about my sniffles. He said, my grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in need, in persecutions, in distress, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. When we're in those moments of weakness, that's when God is carrying us. And sometimes it makes people feel bad, and they're like, God won't give you anything you can handle. Like, I cannot handle this. So now you're making me feel like I should be able to, and I can't. God says he'll never leave us or forsake us, but he didn't say he wasn't gonna not give us difficult things because we could tough it out. And then lastly, I would say don't say at least you weren't that far along or compare one loss to another. Like, my husband never realized how much it hurt me that he would say, well, at least you didn't have to deliver a baby. I'm like, well, I did, you just weren't in there.